Let's get into it now. A spoiler free movie review of Inside Out 2. And I am coming at this review as somebody who loved the original, even though at the time that came out in 2015, probably out of the demographic now as a 32, almost 33-year-old. I'm not the demographic. So, how I'm going to review this review, because always in the comments I get people saying, "You're an adult, why are you talking about kids' movies?" First of all, I feel like Inside Out 1 and now Inside Out 2 transcend what people call kids' movies. I think you can watch any movie no matter what age you are and enjoy it. I think whenever we categorize Disney and Pixar movies as they're for kids, there's some truth to that. They are the key demographic. In this movie, Riley takes place after the first one where she was 12 years old. Now she is 13 years old, entering high school. Although it is for kids, the character in this movie is now a teenager. So I don't know if teenagers are really into Pixar movies. They're probably a little bit too cool for this, but I think this is the type of movie I needed as a kid. So, how I'm going to review this movie, that kid inside of me that lives deep in there, that, as you can see by the looks of this studio, still comes out of me a lot. One emotion in particular that I'll get into later in this review is still rampant. I mean, look at my mug that I'm drinking out of right now. For those of you watching on YouTube, it's literally a Wolverine mug. That kid inside of me is going to review this movie, and the adult in me is going to review it as what kind of movie I needed as a kid. Because for me, Disney movies were often my guiding light, because I had parents who, from Mexico, didn't really talk a whole lot about emotions. Mental health really wasn't a thing for us growing up. I'm a millennial to my core, so I feel we kind of got the tail end of that, of being more upfront talking about our emotions. But as a kid, wasn't really a thing. The only thing we focused on growing up was physical health. You doing all right? And for me and my family, that was a big struggle. My dad has diabetes. I struggled with my weight all throughout middle and high school and college. Like, for me, dealing with just physical health, that I pushed any kind of mental health way down there, put no kind of priority on that. And I think now, as an adult that is healthier, I've lost weight, I'm kind of making up for all that. So where we find our characters in this movie takes place pretty much right after the first one. Everything is going good. Joy, sadness, anger, disgust, and fear have all been running Riley just normally. Everything is good. And the whole main message in Inside Out 1 was learning to deal with sadness and realizing that it is okay to feel sad. It is part of the human condition. But then you have some new emotions show up after the puberty alarm goes off. And now you have anxiety really running that main role that Joy is just so familiar with and so comfortable running. And then you have all these other new emotions coming in, like envy, embarrassment, all those things that come along with going through puberty. And I'll say right at the beginning of this is that is what I really enjoyed about this movie. Doesn't stray away from that. And I know we just had Turning Red, so it's not out of the ballpark for them to do a movie on puberty, but also I think it's a little bit of a risk. Some parents, even though all kids deal with it, maybe don't want to take a 4 or 5-year-old to see a movie about puberty. But I think for me, looking at it as, hey, maybe some kid doesn't have a parent who is going to help them through that, this is a really good movie to watch to learn how to deal with all these new things that you are feeling. And that is really what resonated with me. And it took me back to the first time I felt anxiety in my life and didn't know it. I was in second grade. I went to school and I was so anxious as a kid. I did not want to be late. I never wanted to miss a day. And I didn't know what that feeling was. But looking back on it, it was my anxiety, which I still struggle with. Go to therapy for it. I take sleeping medication so I can sleep at night, because anxiety has become such a just rampant thing in my life. But I've, over the course of doing therapy and learning how to use these tools to combat it a little bit, this movie, even for me, was helpful. But I can only imagine if I watched this back when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, even 12, 13 years old, I would have taken so much from it. Because it probably wasn't until high school, even college, that I really was able to identify that what I was struggling with is anxiety. And I love the way that this movie handled it so well and really showed what anxiety does to not just a kid, but a person. And I think Maya Hawke did a fantastic job voicing the character. And you realize just how much she has that emotion in her voice. And I think just voice acting in this, well, when it came to anxiety, was really great. I really hate the fact that they replaced Bill Hader and Mindy Kaling as Fear and Disgust. And I will say the only really points I held against this movie was the fact that I didn't enjoy the new Fear and Disgust. And I think to have two people who have such great animated voices like Bill Hader and Mindy Kaling, who really felt so perfect in that role, it was a reminder to me of like when I would watch cartoons as a kid and they would replace my favorite characters. I knew. People think that kids don't know. I knew and I felt it in this movie. But back to the way that anxiety was portrayed in this movie, I think it is perfect. So, much like in the first one, where Joy is trying to suppress everything that is harmful to Riley, no bad emotions, no bad memories, all good all the time. And we learn from that, not sustainable. And I think this movie is also great because it shows that you don't have to be happy all the time. And that was something I struggled with a lot because maybe it was the millennial generation, but I feel like there was a lot of toxic positivity online and people just telling you, just smile, get through the day. There are other people going through worse things. You don't have it that bad. And I think sometimes you need that, a little reminder that, hey, maybe what you're going through isn't the worst thing. But sometimes you just need to feel bad. You need to feel angry. You need to feel sad. You need to feel anxious. And you can't just feel happy all the time because the more you just put on that front, the more everything else just bubbles up a little bit more. You have these memories in the back of your head. And that's also what this movie shows, that just being happy all the time isn't going to be good for you. You need to let all of these emotions coexist together, much like they do in this movie. They all need to be at the control for different times, and it's all important to making you the person. I really enjoyed what this movie had to say, and also the animation was a pretty big improvement from the first one, being that the last one came out in 2015. Obviously, they made some improvements in just the way the characters looked. I loved the combination, again, much like they did in the original, of using different kind of animation styles for different characters. I thought that was a really nice touch. There was a video game character that very much looked like an early 2000s or maybe like 2010s video game character. I loved all the new characters they added and feel like they added a lot more comedy. The other part of this movie I really enjoyed that they stepped up a little bit more were all the other elements of the mind that they decided to illustrate. You may remember from the first one, the stream of consciousness or the train of thought that was literally a stream and literally a train. There are so many more things like that in this movie that I don't want to really spoil if you haven't seen it yet, because I feel like that adds a little bit of comedy because you always say these things, you reference them a lot if you just talk about mental health or talk about what's going on in your brain. And it was fun to see them all come to life in a really creative way. And I think that is really what made me feel like Pixar put so much just time and emphasis on really doing what they do best and saying, this needs to be one of our flagship movies. We're going to make you feel. We're also going to give you some really great treats to your eyes. And then we're going to pack it all in an hour and 25 minutes, which this movie does not slump whatsoever. There's no time to. What this one actually did was show Riley a lot more in person and what she was going through with her friends. They went to this hockey camp, and right at the start of the movie, she finds out that her two best friends that she made are not going to go to high school with her. So it's all these emotions that she's struggling with of wanting to hang out with her best friends, but also trying to make new friends who could potentially be her high school friends if she makes the hockey team that she is trying to make at this hockey camp this weekend. So I felt by them doing that, they definitely gave Riley a lot more on-screen time as opposed to just the emotions in her mind. And that got me thinking that they could probably do one more of these. I never really thought they would make an Inside Out 2, that maybe her as a teenager wouldn't really work. They really eliminated that thought from me, and I think I want one more. You may get into some weird territory as you get further into the teenage years, but if you keep it really wholesome, I think you could get one more. They would probably just go 15 years old. I think 16 would be the year to do it, although it would be interesting to see how her emotions change going from high school, graduating, and going to college. I think that would be a really interesting movie. I feel like that one could be really emotional. And the dark side in me was thinking, well, what if one of these emotions died? Because that's what Pixar does. They eventually kill off a character or make you think they're killing off a character. But do you really lose an emotion through life? Maybe. I'm a little dead inside, so I probably lost some emotions along the way. But I loved all the new characters. I think nostalgia, that whole joke was probably my favorite new character, even though on screen just a couple of times, really for just one joke. That was kind of the same joke, but maybe it's because I have such a love for nostalgia that it made me think of what is going on in my brain. I think at the control, nostalgia is just running my things right now. And the other thing that really stuck out to me about this movie wasn't even on the screen, but it was in the lobby. It was full. Our showing was completely sold out. We ended up changing times because we have Regal Unlimited and can basically just switch to anytime we want. And we got the last two seats to a showing on a Saturday afternoon. And the lobby was full of people. The theater was alive. And that just felt good for a Pixar movie. There hasn't been one in a while that really felt like an event. And I've been talking so much about how it feels like a lot of people are waiting until it goes on to Disney Plus. But maybe it's because it's such a big movie, such a big property, that there was that urgency. It crushed at the box office, making $295 million worldwide. Now has the biggest opening of the year, beating out Dune, which is huge. And I just felt that energy in the theater because it reminded me of when we went to go see If. Audience was dead. Kids were not enjoying that movie. Maybe laughed out loud twice in that entire showing of If, which just lacked imagination. I felt like it was a ripoff to kids who went to go see it. And one of those laughs was super cheap because it was a fart joke. But for this one, it felt so different. The audience felt more engaged. And I think this is going to be a core Pixar movie. It'll easily jump into a lot of people's top 5. For me, I think it would have been a perfect movie. But the way I have to judge it, since it is a sequel, I have to compare it to the first one. That first one hit hard. There were some moments in that one that really just poof, hit you in the chest, hit you in the gut, and still resonate with me. I don't think Inside Out 2 had that. I know the moment they were going for, which I won't spoil, but when that moment came, didn't quite pack that punch that Inside Out 1 did. You add that on to the fact that they replaced fear and disgust. I just can't get over that. I love Bill Hader and Mindy Kaling too much. They should have paid them the money. It is interesting to see how little some of the emotions speak, so maybe that plays a little bit into it because I feel like Embarrassment probably could have done his entire lines in one day, but again, that's the character of Embarrassment. So by any other standards, this would be a perfect 5 out of 5 movie, but in my heart, I still love the first one more, but for Inside Out 2, I give it 4.5 out of 5 core memories.